I'm going to recommend, while we're waiting for our 7:30 start time, I'm going to recommend that everybody get a piece of paper or two and a piece of paper or two and some pens. Make sure you have the ability to write stuff down, because we're going to cover a lot in the time that we're going to be together tonight. And Be'ezrat Hashem, please God, hopefully by the end of it, you should be able to run the Seder for yourselves in a way which maybe you haven't had to do. Okay? So just a couple of pointers before we begin. Again, incredibly important to go out and get that piece of paper with a pen. Make sure you've got that, because otherwise it's just going to be a giant jumble of information. Okay? And I want to also explain not only what we're going to be doing tonight, but also what we're not going to be doing tonight. So that's incredibly important to set the expectations. I'm not going to go through the Haggadah and give you a different idea on each part of the Haggadah as to how to run the Haggadah. If we did that, we would actually be here until 4 o'clock in the morning, like myself and my family actually are during the Seder. So we're not going to do that. We're not going through the Haggadah saying Divrei Torah about the Seder. The point of this Seder was to teach people how to run a Seder. So I'm going to try and cram as much as I can in the time that we have, using different aids and suggestions as to how to run a Seder practically. I just want to start by saying we're kind of going to kick off in about 1 minute, but for those of you as well who have a Haggadah, it will be very helpful for you to follow along in a Haggadah. If you don't have a Haggadah, then it's incredibly important as well to understand that the baseline of what you really want to be seeing is to be found in the Haggadot that you're going to choose to use on the specific night. So with those words of introduction, I just want to illustrate. I am a Haggadah aficionado. I have many different Haggadot in my house. Small ones, big ones, some as big as your head. No, joking. That was just for your Lion King fans out there. But some small, some large, some medium size, some little pamphlets like this one, some, some of the more halachic ones, some of the ones that have Divrei Torah. But I must say, if you are in the market to be able to have a beautiful Seder, you got to get yourself one of these. Take a look at it, okay? Write it down. It's called the Cat's Passover Haggadah, okay? Can everyone see it in all the different iterations here that we've got? Incredibly important. Just so you can understand, I just want to show you what this looks like for when you're going through your Seder and reading it in the middle of the night when it gets late, okay? Every part of the Seder is beautifully illustrated. It has the parts that really bring each bit to life. It communicates, by the way. You might want to, if you're running a small Seder like most of us, you might want to skip through these painful pictures of entire families with grandparents at the table, just so it doesn't kind of dig in and make you feel bad about yourself. But it has all the various elements. It really kind of brings to life each of the segments, what it was like when they were in each of them. I would highly recommend them. And the funny thing is, I always say that it's for the kids, but this is not just for the kids. This is for each and every one of us. I mean, just this one page over here is worth the price of the whole Haggadah. It has all the different scenes of Egypt, all the different things that they went through in order to be able to bring the Haggadah to life. It is an incredible aid. That is one. Now, here's the problem. The name of the Haggadah is, again, the Cat's Edition. So someone asked me, do they have it in Sephardic? And I try to explain to them that the difference between the Sephardic and Ashkenaz Haggadah is minuscule. You can have one of these with a great picture of Chamovadia on it for if you want to follow along in the words, in the verbiage. But almost all of the Haggadah, with some small parts, are a little bit different. But you can kind of flip back and forth. The vast majority of it is the same. When you're going through the makot and you're getting a chance to see what each makah was, I promise you'll thank me. Buy them for the adults as well as the kids. Now, if you have a small table and you've got this over here, it's a little bit too big. You can see it's bigger than my face, okay? It's too big. Here is a second runner-up. This is an unbelievable one as well. It's quite narrow. Just so you want to take a look, you can see the difference between the two. So if you have people sitting around the table, again, unfortunately this year it's not as much of a problem. I just want you to see what you've got here. It has color-coded, okay? This is an unbelievable aid to the Haggadah. I promise you'll thank me. You see, do you know, history, Seder of the Seder, word power, deeper look, nusach, and little, the kids, the teenagers, people can just read out little tidbits as you go and include everyone in the Seder. So this one is called The Living Lessons, the Weiss Edition Haggadah. Okay, that's this one. It's unbelievable, also fantastic. So those are the two, it's called The Living Lessons. Okay, I'll take pictures afterwards and screenshot them so that you'll be able to take the exact ones that I've got here and bring them to your bookstores or order them online. I'm sure you can find them online as well. So number one, the Haggadah is of extreme importance. Number two, pro tip for the Haggadah, incredibly important, okay? That is, the preparations that you make before the Seder make all the difference in the world when you're trying to run a smooth Seder. So if you need to, while you're doing the Matzah, give everyone a piece of the Matzah that's exactly the right size, it gets very difficult to do that. If you can take a little bit of time, because that song goes, I'm short on money, but long on time, right? We're long on time now. We're all sitting at home. You have the chance. You get your little kitchen weigh machine out. You weigh or you measure the size of the matzah, the maror. You put each one a bag with the guy's name on it. You have it sitting at the table. You make two of them, first night and second night. Everybody's got their portion. The Seder runs so much smoother. I cannot tell you. So that prep time that you're going to put in is going to be a game changer for having a Seder that runs incredibly smooth. Last but not least, and I'll tell you exactly what else you need to do besides for measuring ordering the matzah and the maror that you need and measuring it out so everyone has exactly what they need. The last thing is the preparation of the ke'ara plate. Now, the Sephardim and Ashkenazim have a different custom. This is the custom of our community. I will show it to you, and as well you could screenshot it, or I'll screenshot it as well later. So if you take a look, you'll see. You have the matzot over here. Almost nobody does this because our matzot are not the same matzot that they used to use back then. Unless you are using the soft matzot that the Sephardim used for many, many years, the flappy ones, which are very small because they're dense. So the amount that you need for volume is very small because it's thicker. When you're using the thin matzot, which are the Ashkenaz crackery ones, which Sephardim seem to have started to use, it's very difficult to put it on a ke'ara plate unless you have an enormous plate. So normally the matzot are here, but in most ke'arot, they go underneath the ke'ara. So what you're looking at is up here, zeroah, that's the shank bone, okay? The leg. Then underneath it you have the haroset. We'll talk about what the haroset is in just a second. Underneath that, the hazeret is the romaine lettuce. In the mid, the lettuce for the sandwich, okay? In the middle, you have the maror, the lettuce for the maror, that's like the endives. Then you have karpas over here. They've written parsley, but many people use celery. And finally, the betzah, the egg over here. That's the order in which you put it, okay? You can use your own plate, not a problem. It doesn't have to say the names underneath it. You don't have to do that. I'm going to post a picture for you afterwards for setting the ke'ara. So before you come to the table, try and measure out the matzot, the maror, have the ke'ara already set. Everyone has their own glasses for the wine. And try as well, if you can, sorry, I'm not sure who needs to be on mute. I'll just mute everybody again, okay? what's it called? Try and measure out the cups that you have before Shabbat, before the holiday, excuse me. You need a 3-ounce cup, according to some opinions, 3.3 ounces. 3.3 or 3 ounces, it's not a huge difference. Don't get your giant wine glasses and then be like, I can't finish the wine. It's so hard to finish the wine. Get small cups. You can order cups that are exactly the right size. It's a very small amount. You'll see when you measure it out, you won't have a problem. Okay. Now, we're all doing all the talk about the prep now. What kind of wine do you need to use? I'm going to talk about each one in their order. The first thing is the wine. What you want, the kind of wine you want, ideally it should not be mivushal, it's not cooked. Not cooked wine. Okay? If you can't drink dry wine like me, no problem. You could drink a sweet wine if you want to. The ideal is that it's red because that reminds us of the fact that the Jewish people suffered and they were bleeding, through all the difficulties that they had in Egypt. So the wine ideally should be red. If you can't have wine, sweet or dry, okay, whichever one, if you want, you're able to use grape juice, 100%. If, at least for the first cup, you should try and drink wine. If you need to, you can dilute the wine, but don't dilute the wine with water, because then you have a problem that you can't make the beracha borei pri hagefen. So dilute the wine with grape juice, okay? If you have an amazing white wine, so the halacha is, no problem, just put a drop of grape juice or red wine in the cup first, and then when you pour the white wine in, it will become red colored. So you'll still have the flavor, you still have your delicious white wine if that's what you like. We used to do that with the blue bar Tanura bottles, but we'd put some grape juice in it before, or red wine, and then you'd pour the rest would be the bar Tanura wine, and then you'd have that kind of wine. So that's the wine. Now, I see someone is asking underage. The bar Tanura wines are about 5%. So generally, it's not a huge problem. If you don't want them to be drinking, then of course, that's up to each parent to decide what it is that they want to do. Just be smart, because remember, there's going to be 4 cups, and you want your kids to stay up for the whole of the Seder. Okay, so that's as far as the wine. Remember, nobody pours their own wine. Okay? Nobody pours their own wine. Clear? No one. So when someone is pouring, so all you need to do is you have the person who's pouring alongside, okay? You have the person pouring alongside. What's it called? You give them, I pour for you, you pour for me, etc., all around, because that's a spirit of what's it called? It's a spirit of royalty that someone is pouring for me the whole night. That's as far as the wines go. Okay. Now, if that's the halacha, we've got the wine covered, we've got the wine squared. We're now going to move to the matzah. The ideal amount of matzah that you need, okay, is, if you want to be fulfilling the best opinions, you're supposed to have a kibetzah for the first and the last, and for the sandwich you have a kizayit. I'll discuss what that means. But practically, a kizayit is about half of a round handmade matzah, and it's almost a whole of a square matzah. So 9/10 Rabbi what's it called? Rabbi Shwek and Rabbi Teludano have in Gateway of Halacha. Okay? Now, that's the amount of a kizayit. For the first one, okay, if you want to push yourself to do the mitzvah the best way, so the best way to do it is to have 2 kizetot for the first and for the last. But you don't have to go with the highest amount if you're going to have 2 kizetot. So we're going to get into the sizes. I just want you to know, so when you're preparing, okay, if you eat half of a circle matzah, you've fulfilled your obligation. If you want to go extra special, do 2 kizetot, so then you would have 2/3 of a round matzah. Okay, that's what you should do if you're going to do the round. Either way, what you want to do is have matzah, which is called matzah shmura. That's very important. Don't have egg matzah on the night of the Seder. Don't have matzah which is not shmura on the night of the Seder. If you can, make sure you get the right ones. Ideally, the handmade. If you can't get a hold of those, then you can have the shmura ones that are machine made. but obviously it's not as good. 1 ounce of the Kapras and 1 ounce of the Maror. That's the halacha that you need to do. You need to prepare for the matzah. There's an amazing kind of laminated card that they have in the Sfarim stores. You can find them. It's all color-coded. You can put the little Maror on it. You lay it out. It will tell you how much you need if your Maror is with stalks, how much you need if your Maror is leaves. Because again, remember, it's all volume. The stalks are much thicker than the leaves. You need much less stalks than you need leaf, okay? If that's what you're using. Okay, all of that is in the prep. I think we're ready now to start talking about the Seder itself. So let's get going. In my house, what we do is, when we start the Seder, the first thing we do is we do the tune, we sing it out. From the beginning till the end. Kadesh, Urhatz, Kapras, Yahatz, Magid, Rohtza, Motzi Matzah, Maror, Korech, Shulhan Arch, Tzafun, Barech, Hallel, Nirtzah, Kadesh, Urhatz, Kapras, Yahatz, Magid, Rohtza, Motzi Matzah, Maror, Korech, Shulhan Arch, Tzafun, Barech, Hallel, Nirtzah. We sing each one you get to. Kadesh is the first one, Kiddush. We sing the whole song round, and then you do the high part, and that's weird. So we go, Kadesh, and then we wait. And then the next one, Kadesh, Urhatz. And that's how we go through the Seder, so that the whole time, the whole night, everyone is exactly aware of where they are in the Seder, and your thoughts are in the right place because you know what goes first and what comes next. So what is the first thing that we do? The first thing is Kadesh. Everyone sits down at the beautiful table. Only the person running the Seder needs a ke'ara, needs the plate with everything on it. He, the guy who's running the Seder, or she, if it's a home where a woman, the mom is running it, okay, what they'll do when they're ready is that they take their things from the plate itself. It's not supposed to be for show. There's big plates for everybody else in the middle, but the person who's running the Seder themselves takes from the ke'ara itself, uses from the ke'ara itself. So you've got the ke'ara sitting there. You've got everything beautifully set up. One more thing that you need is when you're sitting in your chair, we're about to find out that after you make the Kadesh, the Kiddush from the Sidur, you're going to take your cup. As soon as you finish the Beracha, you're going to sit down and you're going to lean to the left. Everything which is supposed to be a sign of royalty, we lean. Okay? So all of the cups, you lean. The matzah, you lean. The sandwich even, you're supposed to lean. If you can, even Shulhan Arch a little bit lean, which is the meal part. Anytime we're trying to show that we're royal, we're leaning. Maror, where you're eating and remembering the slavery, so you don't remember slavery with leaning like royalty. That's a contradiction in terms. So anytime you lean to the left, how does one lean? What's the halacha? It's not just that you lean heke like this in midair. It's meant to be reminiscent of the way the royals would lean on their eating. They had these couches, and they would lean on the couch, and there'd be like a little arm on the side where they could put their head. They were actually leaning their head while they were eating. So, therefore, the halacha is that ideally, your head needs to be supported on the left. You lean to the right, you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah. You don't lean at all, you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah. You got to do it again. So what you do is you lean to the left and you support your head. How does one do that? A couple of tricks. Number one, you get another seat right next to you with a pillow on top of the seat. You lean right on it. You're allowed to use your hand to support it if you need to, or you could lean against the wall, okay? Or you could lean against another chair. Or you could turn your chair. This is a great one. Simple. Turn your chair sideways. Ideal if it has a high back. Put a little pillow there and then just lean like that. Okay? So, by Kadesh, make sure, if you can, that you've prepared the ability to lean on something to the left. So, that is Kadesh. Kadesh is your cup of wine. You lean to the left. Once you start making that, you've finished making the beracha out of the Haggadah, and you finished making it. Again, You definitely have to pay attention. It's not the regular one for I've heard people make kiddush of Shabbat. Okay, no, it's the kiddush specifically that's written in the Haggadah. So you'll read the Haggadah, and when you get to the end of it, you finish making the last beracha, the shechianu, then you lean to the left and you drink. Ideally, you shouldn't drink it in a long time. You're supposed to drink it relatively quickly. So try and go down as fast as you can. That's why it's important to have a small cup. Because ideally, you should finish the whole cup. If you can't, you finish more than half of the cup, okay? So you have to do that as quickly as you can. So that is Kadesh. Kadesh is simply Kiddush. Kadesh, Urhatz. The next thing is, after you finish doing the Kiddush, so then we have Urhatz. We're going to wash our hands. Okay? All of the cups of wine, remember, they should be rinsed out and used again. It's not the way of a king to have a cup that's dirty to be used again. So it should really be washed out. You could divide it amongst the kids. Each one knows, when they have an obligation to go and make sure that they're taking care of washing out, the father's cups. Dad and mom are supposed to be the kings of the castle. So as an example, now the cups are going to be washed, send them off to be washed. Kids should get up and they should know to do that. Now they're going to wash their hands. The second thing is Urhatz. What do? We wash our hands 3 times like you wash when you're washing for Hamotzi, okay? 3 times on each hand. The person who's washing your hands, your children should come in and wash your hands. You should not be washing your own hands, exactly like we said earlier on. So that is Urhatz. There's no beracha. Why are we washing now if we're going to wash again later? This is a holdover from the halakha that used to be in the Beit HaMikdash. When people were eating bitahara, so anything that was dipped in water would need to be rinsed out and ensured. Anything that was going to be dipped in water could make you tameh. So they would wash their hands before they would eat something or touch something that was wet, like a fruit that was dipped in water. We're about to dip this. What are we going to dip it in? We're going to dip it in the salt water. So someone asked, first of all, yes, if it's 2 people, you should wash each other's hands. Someone asked, how come the salt water is not on the ke'ara? Only certain things go on the ke'ara. The salt water does not go on the ke'ara. By the way, you're not supposed to make the salt water on Shabbat, okay, or on the holiday. You're supposed to prepare it before. All you have to do is take a little jug of water like that, add some salt in it, and you're good to go, okay? Now, the Urhatz, you wash 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. No berachav al netilat yadayim. Also, no speaking between washing and eating the karpas, which is going to come next, and that is celery. So everyone gets a piece of celery. I know it's late. You want to eat something. Make sure that you're not eating too much of the karpas. Why? Because if you eat more than a kezait, which is more than 1 ounce of celery, so then you really should make a beracha achrona, and we don't want to do that because we're going to need that beracha for later, okay? So after you've done the urhatz for everybody, you put the urhatz water away. Everyone takes a piece of a celery, half a celery stick is fine. You dip it in the salt water. Everyone dips it in the salt water to remind us of the tears that the Jews shed in slavery. And then when you finish with the salt water, everyone takes that little karpas, and they make a beracha, Baruch Atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, Borei peri ha'adama. You have in mind that this Borei peri ha'adama is going to fulfill your obligation later on for the Maror. Okay? So that is Urhatz. We've done Kadesh. We've done Urhatz. After Urhatz, we've done Karpas. So what happens now? Now that we've eaten the small amount of Karpas, we now get to Yahatz. Yahatz is the time when you have to split the Matza. So when a person is splitting the Matza, what do they need to do? So let me just make this clear. There's 3 matzot that we're going to lay out underneath the ke'ara or wherever it's going to be. The matzah, the 3 matzot are reminiscent of Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and also of Kohen, Levi, and Yisrael. Okay? Now, it's important that the matzah that you're going to split is the middle matzah. So what do? We take the middle matzah and we break it in half. Ashkenazim just break it in half like that, okay? Sephardim go according to the Arizal, they break the matzah into a dalid and a vav. Now, I told you earlier that Sephardim used to eat matzot that was soft. So it was a little bit easy to split it into a dalid and a vav. But when you have a round, brittle cracker and you're trying to split it into a dalid and a vav, hilarity ensues. That is a physically impossible task. I've been trying and running my own seder for many, many years. I have never in my life managed to do that. And let me just explain why. Let's take a circular object. Look at this. This is from the Brit Milah of Sammy Jamal for his beautiful son, for Liam Samuel Jamal. Magnificent. So this is a circular object. If you're going to cut a dalid, okay, the remaining piece is round on this side and a right angle over here. So it's very difficult to have a dalid and a vav. But I promise you, Hashem understands and He forgives. Okay? What do? We take the bigger half, which you were supposed to try and fashion into a vav, and that part we're going to put away for later. The smaller, the dalid, we're going to put back in between the two matzot. Now that vav, the bigger piece, you're supposed to put into a little sack. Many of your kids will make a afikoman sack, or you may have bought one. And that's when the minhag of the Syrians is to say mish'arotam. You take that big piece of matzah, you stick it in the thing, you put your right hand over on your left shoulder, and you say mish'arotam tzirurot besimlotam ashichmam ubenei Yisrael asu kidvar Moshe. Then they'll ask in Arabic 3 questions. Min wen jayeh, where you coming from? Answer, min Misraim. Lewen rayech, where you going to? Or for a woman, lewen rayha, lirushalayim. Ishu zawatek, what are your provisions? Matza umaror, lishana haba'a be'arad Yisrael, benehorin. In the Syrian Haggadot, you will have it there, transliterated, spelled out. You might want to get the Churba Haggadah Sha'arei Rahamim. If I'm not mistaken, it has it there as well. Okay? Now, to be clear, so we've done the Mish'arotam. Everyone gets a chance to do it around the whole table. Some people, one person does it for everybody. Everybody has their own minhagim. The Moroccans have another minhag with the bibehilu, right? So every family has their own minhag. You got to follow your own minhagim. I'm just trying to give you the way it is according to our community. So now that you've done your mish'arotam and you've asked the questions, someone, ideally an older person, then picks up the ke'ara and they start walking out. Much of the halachot of the night are in order to be able to ensure that everybody, all the kids, are utterly confused. The ideal of the night is that the kids are asking questions. We've unfortunately ruined it by the fact that we've taught the kids all the questions. So now that the kids are being prepared so well by the schools, the reality now is that they're prepared with all these questions and they're not actually asking any questions, okay? So it's very important to be able to understand that each one of these customs is designed to be able, Kadesh yish'alu atinokot. So someone will stand up, they'll walk out with the ke'ara, all the kids, you ask the question, what's going on? They're leaving, we didn't even start yet, I can't believe it, they're so selfish, etc., etc. Now, they've started to walk out. Now, when they've started to walk out and everybody is losing their minds, and we've kind of arranged for the kids to kind of be excited and all woke about the fact that something is going on over here. At this stage, now we're about to begin the portion called Magid. So right now, what do? We say the words Ha lachma anya. Now these words Ha lachma anya diachelu avatana be'arad Misraim. That is basically the tune for all of the nusach according to the Sephardim. You got that clear? Right? That's how it goes. Kol dechfin yete v'yechol, kol desrich yete v'yifsach, Hashatacha l'shana ba'a be'arad Yisrael, Hashatacha avde l'shana ba'a be'arad Yisrael, Benechorin. So you're reading the words of the halach ma'anya. Ensure that the halach ma'anya, which means this bread of the poor, that every time you're referencing the matzot need to be opened. Okay? All of Magid, the matzah should always be opened and revealed. It's called lechem oni, lechem she'onim alav, bread that we answer on it many things. The only time the matzah is not covered is every time you pick up the wine. You might remember this halacha from Shabbat, that when you're doing the kiddush, the bread is covered, because the bracha of hamotzi supersedes the bracha of borei priya gefen. So same thing here. Every time you're lifting up a cup, the lifting up of the cup, so to speak, embarrasses the bread or the what's it called, the matzah, and then we cover it up. So halach ma'anya, the matzah is revealed. Once you finish halach ma'anya, we are ready to start the Haggadah. In that moment, remember our cups of wine, they need to be refilled now. So everyone refills for the next person, and now the person who's got the ke'ara comes back and the questions are asked, ma nishtana. Usually the minhag is that the youngest kid has a chance to say ma nishtana. They ask the questions, and that's a wonderful and a beautiful moment in the Seder. Try, in order to include the grandparents, give them a little bit of nahat if they're not going to be there. I know it's very hectic the day of, but please make the effort for your grandparents, that for the grandparents of these kids, let them get the chance to hear them say ma nishtana, to do some songs from the Seder with them, even though it's before the holiday. You know, you can't do the Zoom. That's not allowed. You cannot do the Zoom Seder live on the evening. It's asur. Okay? I know there was a letter. The letter is incorrect. Okay? So if there's a case of a life that's in danger, then maybe they're allowed to use it. A person should ask a specific halacha, but there's no way that it's mutar. So now that's very important. Now, once we understand that, we've got the ma nishtana. Okay, the ma nishtana begins. We start the series of Magid. Now, this is very important. Magid literally is a mitzvah from the Torah. So if we think, what are the important mitzvot of the night? Matza, we have Maror, we have the 4 cups of wine, we have Hallel, okay? We have the leaning, we have a mitzvah deoraita of vihigadeta libincha, teaching your children. This is one of the most important mitzvot in all of the Torah, not just on the night of Pesach, because it makes up the basis, the bedrock of what it means to teach your children about our Jewish history. Okay? Take your time on the Magid. If the kids are young, be smart, because you could talk to your kids in any language throughout the whole night. If your kids are going to lose interest, maybe move the Magid along a little bit quicker. You don't have to say a Dvar Torah on each paragraph. There's no mitzvah to have gematriot and all sorts of crazy Dvar Torah, which are not to do with the story of going down into Egypt, into slavery, and how we got out with the Makot and the splitting of the sea. That is the story we're telling. We're telling about how the Jewish people were enslaved, how difficult the slavery was, all the details you can. There is an amazing book. Write this down. The name of the book is Let My Nation Go. It is a book in English that is a compendium of all the Gemarot, all the Midrashim. It tells it in a story form. It weaves it as a narrative. Incredibly important. Prepare, the same way you prepared the matzah before, prepare the story before. Little nuggets that maybe you never said to the kids before. Okay, so read up. This is the time, Magid. That is the important thing. You got to be creative. You want to get your kids involved, start to think of some games that you're going to play in order to bring the story to life. One game that we played in my family, I call it 911. What's 911? Everyone in the family has a chance where they have to make a phone call. A phone call to 911. There's no phone in there, it's recording. But you make a phone call to 911 and you have to report the makah that you are seeing. 911, so what's the emergency? Oh my God, you don't understand. I just went to go get myself a cup of water. I turned on the sink and blood came out. Sir, you must be drunk. There's no blood coming out of the sink. I'm telling you, there's blood coming out of the sink. I went to the thing. I thought maybe my sink was ruined. I went in the refrigerator. All of my thick cups of blood. Each person reports the story, okay? That's one example of how people are actually getting into it. Another beautiful way. If people want some resources, I'll send them to you as well, okay? Another resource, another idea is to try and imagine and ask the kids, what do you think it smelled like during the makah of the frogs? What did it sound like? Well, what use their senses to be able to try and recount the story of how it was in a way where, now, if you're creative, you go on Amazon, you can find lots of little things as well, okay? You have the hailstones, you get a giant bag of marbles. We're chucking things at my Seder, literally, okay? Things are being thrown around the table. It's important to try and imagine what that must have looked like, what that must have felt like. So you get little fake paste-on boils you could put on. There's, little Maror hats. Everything you need to do to bring the story, into a sharp and clear focus. And all of you could do your own thing. We have, just as a way of getting the kids involved when it starts to get a little bit late, we got all those army menchies, the green ones with the standing. We made them the Egyptian army, and then everyone got, or you could do it with those little fake little animals made out of plastic, and then you get a whole bag of rubber bands, and you try and shoot down as many animals as you can, and that's the plague of Dever, where all the animals would fall down. It's a fun thing that allows people in the moment to get in and not get tired, even though it's a long night. So that is the story of Magid. Magid takes us all the way through, okay? So it starts with Manishtana. Now, it's important you understand the sequence of Magid and how it works. Manishtana halayla hazeh. How come the night is different? Everything needs to be translated if you don't understand it in Hebrew, okay? So, how come we, on the first night, we ask Shokol a lot? You only dip one time. Clearly they weren't Sephardic, where we were dipping in hummus and matbucha and tahina and everything else. Either way. And now we're doing 2 times. How come we're doing all these things? And the answer is, we call back the ke'ara, they bring it back on the table. Why are we doing all these crazy things tonight? Because once we were slaves. And drive this home. If we were not redeemed back then by God, adayin anachnu ubanenu, we, our children, our children's children. How could that be? Why would we not have been freed by Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation? Talk about the mentality of a slave. Talk about how a person can be broken. Talk about how a person can give up hope. All of that is the realistic material of what it is that we're saying in the Haggadah. The Haggadah then continues, and it tells us all about all the people in the past who talked about the night of the Seder, even if they were very great. The great sages, Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, you have to do it in the daytime, in the nighttime, etc., etc. Baruch HaMakom Baruch Hu, blessed are you Hashem that you gave us the thing. Now it comes to the 4 sons. The 4 sons, Keneged Arba Banim Dibra Torah. When the Torah talks about teaching your kids, it talks about it in 4 different ways. And what that's meant to help us understand is that there are many different possibilities for human education. A chacham is thinking one way. A rasha is thinking another way. A tam, simple, what's going on? I don't understand. Right? Just sitting there quietly. When are we having soup? Okay? Each one of these kids, you have an obligation to get them involved. Okay? So whatever you could do to talk to your children in their language. By the way, again, remember the kids and remember this book. Ask them if they see something in the book that really makes them scared or that makes them happy, to tell you about it, to show everyone. the pictures. What is he doing? How come he's doing that? How come the lady's crying? What is she screaming about? It's got the little story over there. That's why this is an invaluable tool for generating discussions. So we go all the way back in time. We talk about how the Jewish people evolved from the fact that we were once metahila ovdei avodah zarah all the way across to the Jewish people going down to Egypt. Now we get to V'hi She'amda. V'hi She'amda, sing it in your favorite Shweki tune, in your favorite German tune. V'hi She'amda, V'hi. However you want to sing it, go for it. Go crazy. No problem. Okay? But at that stage, when you're lifting the cup, what do we have to do, guys? Remember? Make sure that you're covering the matzot, because now you're lifting the wine. That's the V'hi She'amda. After the V'hi She'amda, you put the wine back down. Again, you open up the matzot, and you carry on, and we start learning about all the difficulties of the Jewish people. And it brings each word in the pasuk, and we're supposed to learn from that all of the difficulties, okay? We fly through all of them until we get to the 10 makot. Dam, Sefardea, etc., etc. Now, when you get to that page, you'll see in every Haggadah, you can see even in this one, it's going to be covered in stains. And the reason for that is because the custom is that when you get to that stage, what we're supposed to do at that stage is we're supposed to say, Dam va'esh. You take the wine, there's a bowl that you've prepared, only the guy who's running the Seder. Dam va'esh v'timirot ashan. Each word that the leader says when he pours, everyone else says, Rahmana litzlan, Hashem should protect us. So once, Dam, Esh, Timrot Ashan, each time, Rahmana litzlan, Rahmana litzlan, Davar Acher, and then he goes to Elu Esem Makot Shevi HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mitzvim Mitzrayim, Ve'eluhem, Dam, Tzefardea, Kinim. Don't have a heavy pour. You're not going to have any left in the cup to pour. Okay, 10, each one of the 10 makot. After that, Ditzach, Rabbi Yehuda, Yetan Atem B'hem Simanim, Ditzach, Adash, Be'achav. So in total, how many do we have? 3 in the beginning, 10 in the middle, 3 at the end, 16 pours. Each time they answer, Rahmana litzlan. Once you finished pouring it out, you pour the rest of that out. That was a cup of pouring off that speaks of all the difficulties that the Jewish people went through. So at that stage, you don't want to be drinking from that cup, the cup that has all of the makot and all of the challenges in it. You spill the rest out on be'achav, and once you've done that, okay, someone will go and pour the cup out. In fact, in Hallel back in the day, everybody say hi, yay! Okay, now you need to go to sleep. And at the time, back in the day, they would take that, the wine, they would go bring it to the house of somebody that was a terrible anti-Semite, was trying to kill the Jewish people, and they would spill the wine over there. They would say that all of the things that we were saved from once from our enemies, Hashem should save us as well once again. Today we don't do that, especially when we're in quarantine. You don't run around in the streets of your city with a thing of grape juice, even if you don't like your neighbors. Work that out. What you do is you spill it out in the sink. There is a custom that someone goes and spills it out and says a prayer when they spill it out for anything that they want. They make a tefillah, a prayer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sometimes if there's someone who's single at the table, you want them to get married, so that's also a custom to have them go spill out the wine and dinner. After that comes many people's favorite part, Dayenu. Now we've hit Dayenu, okay? You've come to the song of Dayenu, you know you're almost there, and then there's one very important part. This is, in some people's opinion, the central point of the Seder. We say Pesah, Matza, Maror, and we describe each one what they are. 2 of them we're going to point. 1 of them we're going to look. We'll say Pesach, Shayu Avotenu Ochlim, the Pesach that our forefathers used to eat, the Pesach sacrifice. At that point, you look at the shank bone on the ke'ara. You don't point. Why? Because pointing would seem to be setting it apart as if it was as if it was Jessica's asking, where do you spill the wine? You spill it down the drain. And then you bring back a new cup and you refill the cup of the leader of the Seder. Okay? The Pesach, you just look, you don't point. Because that would make it seem as if it's a korban. We don't have the Bet HaMikdash now. So everyone says Pesach, you look, but you don't point. Then we say Matza Azu, you point to the matzah, or you hold up the matzah. Matzah zu, this matzah that we eat, why do we eat it? And you give the reason, because when the Jewish people left Egypt, they had to do it very, very quickly. And they couldn't let the dough rise. And finally, Maror as well, you point to the Maror. After that, the rest of this part from Lefikach is right after that. We cover the matzah, raise that second cup. Lefikach anachnu chayavim lehodot lehalel leshabeach lefaer. And then they go through and they sing all, which is really the first part of Hallel, all the way until the Beracha. Baruch ata Amonai Ga'al Yisrael. You drink your second cup, remember, while you are leaning. Someone over there, as I said it, was leaning, and that's amazing. I love the training kicks in. So as you're doing it, you're drinking the second cup, and now we are done with Magid. As much time as you want, you could spend on Magid, but be smart. You could talk about it later, either during the meal or even afterwards. My own house, until I fall asleep, I try and talk to the kids. My kids will tell you about the Chinese electronics, which sounds like a very weird thing, and it is. I would go in my pajamas after the Seder is over at 4 o'clock in the morning. I would go into their room, lie down together with them in their bed, and I would continue talking about Egypt until I would literally fall asleep. And I would be talking, but I would already be asleep, and then I would just come out with random words. And my kid, I'd be like, Chinese electronics and things like that. I don't know. I would just mumble about it, and then my kids would say, Abba, go to bed. Okay? So at that stage, you've done your best to try and stay up as long as you can. That is Magid. Now we are up to Magid Rohtza Motzi Matzah. The next part of the Seder is Rohtza. Rohtza is, again, they bring out the water and they wash the hands of the father and the mother. Really, everyone could wash everybody else's hands, but at least the father and their mother should be washed in their seat. They wash this time again, like for bread, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But this time, you make a beracha on hamotzi. You don't speak like you wouldn't when you make for bread. And after you have a rohtza, everyone has washed their hands and they've not spoken. Now comes Motzi Matzah. Now this is a little bit confusing for the leader. I'm just going to explain it very slowly. Remember how many matzot we have? We've got 3. Top one and bottom one, and the middle one, which we've already broken. Remember the vav that we did misharotam, that you put on the side or that you hid somewhere in the house so that the kids could go find it later? Okay, whatever you want to do with that, different customs. But the little piece inside in the middle, that's the dalit, otherwise known as what looks like the rest of the Pac-Man, okay, the bit that you cut out. Okay, so you've got you got that little piece there, and that's the middle. So you hold all 3 together. Okay, you hold all 3 together, and you say Baruch atah Amonai Elokeinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Okay, after you say hamotzi lechem min haaretz, you drop the bottom matzah, and now you're holding the top one and the middle one. You carry on and you say Kiddushanu mitzotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. The reason why you're doing this is because when you're making the beracha of hamotzi lechem min haaretz, you're always supposed to have 2 whole breads, lechem mishneh. We know that from every Shabbat and every holiday. Same thing here. Since the middle one is broken from before, from Yahatz, we want you to have 2 whole matzot. So therefore, you're holding all 3 for the first beracha. Then you drop the bottom one and you're holding the top one and the middle one. Is that clear? Just reading this, absolutely, Josh. The halacha is, in that scenario, you would wash your own hands. You'd wash your own hands, okay? Now, again, you could wash other people's hands. The father and the mother shouldn't wash other people's hands because that's not, again, a sign of kingship. But everybody else, one person in the family can go and wash other people's hands, okay? Now that we've done the Motzi Matzah, so what happens? Remember, everybody should have their piece of matzah already in front of them. If not, there's a central plate with the matzot on them. And now the person who made the beracha breaks a kezait from the top matzah and technically a kezait from the middle matzah. It's impossible to do the full amount of kezaits and also be able to eat it in the right amount of time. The amounts of time range from 2 minutes to 9 minutes, okay? We try and do it in 4.5 minutes, if you can. The time starts from the first swallow, not from the first chew, from your first swallow. So you could start chewing before you swallow anything, and then when you've got a little bit already in there, then you could swallow and then try and do it on the clock at least in 4.5 minutes, okay? Now remember, ideally, the one who's running the Seder, kizayit from the top, kizayit from the middle. What does he do? But you don't do the full amount. So you would do, like I said earlier, together it would be 2/3 of a matzah. 1/3 of a matzah from the middle, let's say, 1/3 from the top. That's your own portion. But you're supposed to give everybody at the table a small piece from the top and the middle matzah. So they'll have their own half a matzah where they are. You give them a little piece of the top and the middle one dipped in salt. Everybody should dip their matzah in salt. And then the process begins. Leaning to the left, you eat the matzah, chew it up, swallow. If you can, they say to try and swallow a large amount in one time so that you got the minimum shiur of a kezayit in one swallow, but not everyone can do that. Don't worry about it. My rabbi also told us once, it can't be that the Torah wants you to be like a cow, where you're just shoving food down your gullet, okay? So you do your best as best you can. Pro tip. Heat the matzah in the oven. I know that this sounds obvious, but you don't understand the difference between eating matzah that is put in the oven crispy, even maybe a little bit burned, and not too much, but a little bit, and matzah that you just pulled out of the box. Especially if it's thick. Your jaws start to kill. You're sitting there chewing, you can't breathe. God knows what's going on, especially if you have coronavirus, Mejnun. Do your best. Make sure, stick it in the oven. It doesn't take long. You could stick a whole stack of matzot in the oven for 3 or 4 minutes. Make sure the oven's on. Don't turn it on the holiday. Make sure it was on from before. Stick it in the oven 3-4 minutes. It comes out hot. You make the beracha. Everyone's got their matzah. I promise you, it crisps in your mouth. It makes it very, very easy. In general, the thinner the matzah is, the easier it is to eat. Just so you know as well. Different companies make matzah that's thicker or thinner. You could ask around what's it called. But I promise you, toasted matzah, game changer. Gematria, game changer. Okay. Now, that is for the mitzvah of Motzi Matzah. Okay? Everyone can have a little salt by their plates as well, so that you can put on. Someone over there is saying best matzah is Papa. I don't know if Rebbitzin Jamie is getting a couple of she's getting commissions over there. By the way, I was thinking also Papa Salem, but what's it called? It was good back in the day. I don't know if anyone else wants, they could put on the public chat. You know, there's all sorts of different ones. Everyone's got their own one. Haredim, by the way, is also the thinnest. I've heard as well. Haredim is very, very thin. But just please remember, very important, the thinner the matzah is, okay, the thinner the matzah is, the more matzah you have to eat. Because it goes by volume. So just make sure that if you're eating matzah, which is wafer thin, okay, I shouldn't use that word. I saw earlier someone logged on who was Christian. So wafer thin matzahs is probably not the right way to go. But either way, if you're eating very thin matzah, you got to make sure that it weighs, again, the same amount. Yes, Rafal is saying the more it costs per pound. Yes, it is true, but you save that in dental bills. Okay, now let's move on. So we've got now Motzi Matzah covered. You've now got your matzah out of the way. Just another pro tip. If you're going to put on a nice white shirt for the holiday, make sure it's one of these. No flipping pocket. Schoolboy error is a shirt that has a pocket. You get the little crumbs down in there, especially the little toasted bits or the black little bumps from on the matzah. It gets underneath there. It makes your whole shirt. Rookie mistake. No pockets, okay? Very important. Also, make sure that when you're doing it, when you're eating the matzah, you're leaning the whole time. A lot of times people forget you have to do the whole time as much as well. Now, I said already, David, how much you have to do. The minimum amount is half of a round matzah. Ideally, you should do 2/3 of the matzah by Motzi Matzah and by afikoman at the end. And half a matzah is enough for korech, okay, if you want to do it. Now, if someone cannot eat that, you could ask me afterward. Someone is very old, I don't know, dentures, whatever, you can't chew. So then, yes, you're allowed to have less, and we can discuss that. We can discuss that privately. Okay, now we've done Motzi Matzah. What do we got? Kadesh, Urhatz, Kapras, Yahatz, Magid, Rohtza, Motzi Matzah, Maror, Korech, Shulhan Arch, Tzafun, Barech, Hallel, Nirtzah, Kadesh, Urhatz, Kapras, Yahatz, Magid, Rohtza, Motzi Matzah, Maror. Okay, that's what we're up to. Maror. Now, Maror, remember, there's two Marors. The Maror that you do when it's Maror, the Syrian custom has been endives, but you could use escroll. There's other things you could use. Ashkenazim, because they like pain, they use horseradish. Some of them, they grate it before. They make sure it's covered in plastic so they don't lose one drop. One time I had a guy who was a grandson of the Chazon Ish at my table for Pesach. He gave me his family's special horseradish. I can't tell you. I finally felt what it's like to cry on the on the night of Pesach. I took this much. I put it on top of my Korech. Okay, I figured I'll try and hazit the guy. He was turning red. He can't breathe. Okay, it's like unbelievable. We definitely got it easy with the romaine stalks and the endives. So for maror, what do we use? You could use the endives, or you could use the romaine. The reason why romaine lettuce is preferred is because just like the Jewish slavery in the beginning, when you start to eat it, it seems mild, easy, but then you keep on chewing on them, and especially the stalks themselves are actually bitter. So, that symbolizes the time that we were in Egypt as well. Yes, Leora, the old soft matzot were, I don't know if they were the size of a pita, a little bit bigger, maybe around like this big, but they're very, very thick. It's easier and more difficult to eat them because you're eating much less. But I had it the first time in London. I was like, amazing. Wow, I'm only going to need to eat like this much. I can't tell you. It was a disaster. It's like chewing wet cardboard. But like, when you have to recycle the box and you squeeze the box and it's that thick, that's what it's like chewing. It's very difficult. The reason why a lot of people stopped making them is because it's a little harder to make the soft matzot and not have them become hametz. Yes, you're allowed to use romaine, no problem, even if you don't find it bitter. That's the halacha. Try and use the stalks because the stalks themselves are how do you call it? We're getting a pro tip from Solomon Sarway. Heating the soft matzah makes it taste like pita. Tried and tested. I don't believe that for a second. Oh my gosh. Okay. Definitely better. I'll agree with you. But there's no way it tastes like pita without yeast, man. All right? Now, either way, whatever you're going to do, make sure that it has a good hashgacha. Super important. The last thing you want to do is get diarrhea and constipation from the matzah. And not only was it a matzah, it was hametz, and you broke the whole Pesach. Make sure it has a good hashgacha on the tin. Very, 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 very important. Even the thick matzahs, when you stick them in the oven, no problem. You could just go through them like a beaver. You're like, it's amazing, no problem. Okay, so now we're up to the maror. What do you do with the maror? You dip the maror in the haroset. Everybody in the world is convinced that just like chicken soup, they think that their mother or their grandmother makes the best chicken soup. They think their mother makes the best haroset. Unfortunately, they're wrong. My mother makes the best haroset. Either way, but the point is that the nature of the haroset incorporates a few different things that you could put on. So as an example, you could put in dates, you could put in wine, apples, nuts. All these different things are possible for people to be able to put in. And then when you mix all of that up, we'll give you a couple of recipes if anybody wants. I'll share with you some recipes, but you could also find online. Just if you're watching on Instagram, I'm going to need to redo the live in 3, 2, 1. Sorry, everybody else. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Live video ended. Save. Share to story. And back to live. Why do they do this? Don't they know that we're going to give like hour-long shiurim on their platforms? Are they not aware that this is why God invented technology? So that we could all learn how to do a seder properly? Oh, Zuckerberg. Oh, okay. I hope Zuckerberg is doing a seder and he's not using Facebook Live. Okay, moving swiftly on. So Maror, what do? You take the ounce of Maror. Remember that? The anti-Semite. I love you, Don. Okay? So you take the ounce of Maror. Remember, we already made the Boreh Priya Adama before. No leaning for the Maror. You take the stalks, however much it is, and you dip it in the haroset. I have seen people who do not understand the point of the maror. They think that the point of the maror is only like a tortilla chip in order to shovel more charoset in their mouth. That is not the point of the maror. In fact, when you dip it in, you're supposed to shake it off so there's not that much on it, okay? Very important. You're supposed to taste the bitterness of the maror, okay? So you dip it in, and then you shake it off. You want to go haroset crazy? No problem. Do that during Shulhan Arch or during all the days of Hol HaMoed where you can't think of anything to eat, so you put every possible thing on the cracker and then you think that you're a gourmet chef. Okay? So save that for later. Now, Maror, that's the halacha. You do it, no leaning. Now that you finish the Maror, okay, now comes Korech. Korech is is the sandwich that you're going to make according to Hallel. Hallel HaZaken, he held that the way that you would eat the Korban Pesach was al matzot umurorim yochelu. That was the only way that you fulfilled the obligation. So unless you have all of them together, you didn't fulfill the obligation. So what did he do? He would take haya korchan ve'ochlan bevat achat. He would turn them into a sandwich and eat them together. And through that, he will fulfill his obligation. So you got to take now for Korech. you take the matzah that you've got left at the bottom, okay, and you take the matzah, you bring it. You crack it in half. You got to make sure. Again, remember, everybody has a half of the matzah. Make sure you give everyone a little piece of that bottom matzah to add to their matzah. You put on the matzah, you put your maror. On the maror, you put haroset, and then you fold it in half, and then you have your sandwich, okay? This sandwich is guaranteed to ruin whatever you're wearing. There's no way that you don't get nailed with charoset, with a little bit. The worst is you think you're in the clear, and you're doing the bite, and you're excellent while you're leaning, and then you get a little bit of haroset juice that just made an amazing shidduch with the lettuce, okay? It drips off the back side, didn't even notice it, and you look down, you're like, yes! But the thing is, it's evil. It dripped out the back, and it nailed you on your belly instead of on your chest area, okay? So don't ever think that that you got away scot-free until you examine the whole item later. Some people, by the way, pro tip for the Korech, because it's very difficult not to get, is you lean left on the table. Sorry for the Instagram, I'm leaning out the screen, but you go left like this on the table, and you lean forward, so you're eating actually over the table, but still leaning to the left, and supporting your head so that so that you don't get yourself dirty. That was another little pro tip. So after you do the Korech, you've got the sandwich, you finish the sandwich. So now there's a couple of different opinions. On the ke'ara, remember, we've got on the ke'ara, we have the egg, and we also have the zeroah, okay? So what do we got? Question here? The question is, so the sandwich is made out of only half a matzah, not two halves. Correct. You would make half of a round matzah, and then you break that in half. So basically, each side is really only a quarter of the matzah. Okay, we have another question here. What's the difference, chazeret and maror? Yes, absolutely, you could use romaine for both. Lots of people like to use the endives for the first one and the romaine for the second, or vice versa, to create a little bit of a difference. But technically, you could use the same one. You could use the same one for both. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Now, so on the ki'ara, there's two items now. There's one which is the egg, and the other which is the zeroah. The zeroah is very complicated. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody understands this. The zeroah is complicated. What is the complication with the zeroah? Because so someone just, sorry, before I get that, I have one more question over here. The chazeret is the lettuce that we use for the sandwich. It's just another name for the maror, okay? So the chazeret is the lettuce for the sandwich, and the maror is whatever you're using for the maror. Someone is asking, can you use regular square matzah for the sandwich, or does it not need to be somewhat of the bottom matzah? For the person who's running the seder, it should be the bottom matzah. For everybody else, it's of the matzah. You should use, ideally for the seder, if you can, handmade. If you can't, or if it's too expensive, or if you can't get it, of course, yes, you could use the shimura. Now, let's go back to the egg and to the zeroah. There's many different opinions about the zeroah. If you roasted it, only roasted it, okay? Now, what's the definition of roasted for all the men here who don't know the difference, okay? You guys all know your barbecue, but roasting is when you heat something only with fire. Cooking is when you cook something, or boiling is when you use water, okay? The Korban Pesach was roasted over a fire. Since we do not have a Beit HaMikdash, and we don't want people thinking that this is a Korban, because we don't have a Beit HaMikdash, we don't have the sanctity and the purity, so therefore we have a problem if you think that, remember before you couldn't point at it? Same thing here. So if you roasted it, you don't eat it. You do not eat it, okay? Some people have a minhag to roast it and then boil it, or to only boil it. Whichever one. But if you've done both, okay, then the halacha is you're allowed to taste from it. Different opinions. Some people eat a little bit of it in the evening. Some people just look at it. Some people eat it the next day. Different opinions. Every family had different minhagim. Even amongst the halabim, there were different customs for this, okay? Now, the egg, on the other hand, represents the korban chagiga. What does that mean? On the Pesach Seder, on the night of Pesach, a person would have, yes, roasting could mean in the oven, or it could mean over a flame. But it's not when it's done, when it's with water. That's boiling or cooking, okay? Make sure that you just boil it a little bit in the water also, and then you have no problems, okay? Either way, baking it with water is not considered roasting, even if you're baking it in the oven, okay? Is this clear to everybody? So just go the extra way. Boil it, okay, a little bit in water, and then you can roast it afterwards, or roast it and then afterwards cook it with some water, so that way you've not got into any trouble, okay? Now, the egg itself, just I want to make this clear. There's one egg on the ka'ara, then you have a bowl of eggs for everybody else. For the egg, everybody says a line. You pick it up and you say, Zecher lekorban chagiga. Even the opinions, though, that are going to eat from the shank bone, if they roasted it and used water, okay? Even the opinions that did it for both, you do not say Zecher lekorban Pesach, because we can't say that. We don't even mention it. So if you're going to eat something from it, you eat a little piece of it. But if that's your custom. Otherwise, save it for the next day and eat a piece of it the next day. So now all of that is at the end of Korech. Now that you've done that, the custom is to take the egg and to dip it in the salt water as well. All right? Once you've done all of that, we've now finished Korech. And now, we're ready to eat. Okay, now, you've done everything right. You've earned it. It's time to eat. Okay? By the way, eat as much as you want. Have dessert if you want. But once we finish with Shulhan Arch, okay, we're going to go to the Afikoman, which is at the end of the Shulhan Arch, right after that by Tzafun. There's no eating at all. There's no drinking anything except for the wine, and if you need water, you're allowed water, but nothing else, okay? So if you want to have dessert, you have the meal and you have dessert. But it's important that when you're going to be eating the meal, that you don't eat so much that you're too full to eat the afikoman. Because the afikoman, if you're stuffed already, and then you eat it, you're like, oh, you're shoving it in, you don't fulfill the obligation. The ideal thing to do is, in order to get to afikoman, which is at the end, we're going to come to that in just 1 second, by the time of Hatzot, halachic midnight. Okay? However, many families don't get there on that time. And it's important to note, the Shulhan Arch, when he says start the Seder on time, Vivian, yes, you could eat half an egg, no problem. Joel, can you repeat the part of saying Zech l'Korban Pesach? No, yes, you do not say Zech l'Korban Pesach. You just leave it on the plate and you look at it, okay? But you don't say anything, you don't have to mention it, okay? Earlier, we referenced it when we said Pesach zu sha'anu ochlim, we looked at it. But you don't point at it and say Zech l'Korban Pesach. Okay? If you usually eat the lamb, so just don't say Zech l'Korban Pesach. If you usually eat the lamb, if it's roasted only, that's asur. Okay? If it's roasted and boiled, or vice versa, the other way around, then it's not a problem. Okay? Now, you ate the meal now, Shulchan Orech, have a beautiful meal, make it lovely. It's the meal of Yom Tov, so there's a mitzvah to eat. Okay? Remember, Yom Tov, there's a mitzvah of wine and a mitzvah of meat. And simcha ela b'basar v'yayin. So, what's it called? Sorry, vegans. So if you're going to, you eat wine, you eat meat, fantastic, you had a great meal, now you had Shulchan Orech, you want to eat a little dessert, have a little dessert, you're fine. Even a coffee, by the way. You want to have a coffee now. Because really, you shouldn't have a coffee later. So if you feel yourself sleepy, go for the coffee before you finish the meal. Once you finish the meal, at the end of the meal, so now after the dessert, after your coffee, comes Tzafun. Now is the time when you make your deals over the afikoman. The kids, they hit it, you hit it, they found it, you found it, you promised, They finally come. Yes, you do not have to hide the afikoman. It's not an obligation. It's an inyan to put it away, because the word Tzafun means something that's hidden. So even if you don't have kids at the table, you take the afikoman, which is still in its little pouch, you hide it somewhere. But you don't have to be hiding it everywhere like this and like that. You don't have to go crazy. When we used to be in Pesach programs, where we're sitting in one little small room, you can't hide it, the afikoman would sit on the table. I would mentally hide the afikoman in my house. And my kids would have to search my house at home in their minds, and that's how they would find the afikoman. There's no obligation. Everyone's chasing around. No obligation, okay? It should be hidden. No problem. You got that, okay? Sometimes the kids steal it. They hide it. Every family has their own item. Okay, but once now you got it back, you did your deals, they got their prize, whatever the case is, you made sure to keep them up. They're excited for it. You now take this piece of the afikoman and you break a piece of the afikoman. You give everyone a little piece from the afikoman itself, and they have the rest of the of the shiur from your little pile of matzah. Remember, back to the ovens. You got to put it in the ovens, otherwise you're not going to chew it properly. Okay, so what do? Everybody has to eat, again, minimum half a matzah. Ideally, again, for this one, is 2/3 of a matzah. If you want to go crazy, that's if you're doing the best. What does 2/3 mean? It means a little bit more than half. Okay, and that is the tzafun. Okay, so when it comes to tzafun, everybody has now eaten afikoman. Make sure you're lean. You don't want to eat that twice. Oh no, siree. Okay, you eat the matzah. You finished eating your afikoman, and now we come to barech. Barech. Okay, what is barech? Barech is birkat hamazon. Simple. Okay, so you open up your Haggadah, and you make sure that you've got this you've got the cup in front of you of wine. You pour the cup of wine, you make birkat hamazon. As soon as you finish birkat hamazon, you've got that cup already in front of you, and you make the beracha after Birkat Hamazon of Borei Pri HaGefen. You have in mind that the third Borei Pri HaGefen, this third cup of Borei Pri HaGefen, you're going to have in mind for, what's it called? For later. Someone is asking, do you need Kizai for Afikuman? Really, ideally, like I said, it should be Kibesa, which is really the double shiur. That's why I said 2/3. If you can't eat 2/3, so eat the half, okay? Now that you've done the third cup with the lean, you've now finished Barech, you've done Birkat Hamazon. You now pour the fourth cup, okay? And now we're ready for Hallel. The beginning of the fourth cup, okay? You've now got the fourth cup in your hand. Now is when we say Shefo Chamatcha. Yes, Joel, look in the Haggadah. You say Hagefen because remember you just said Birkat Hamazon. You broke all the berachot from before. So there's another Borei Pri HaGefen. It's right in the Haggadah. You'll see it over there when you're following inside. Okay. Shefo Chamatcha ala goyim is now the beginning of the Hallel. Now remember, Hallel should be sung. Take turns. Pass the ball around. Use whatever tunes you want. I don't care if you're going to go old school, Lolanu, Lolanu. You want to go like that? Or Hashem Zicharanu Yevarech, like you did when you were on Shabbaton. You could do it like that. Or you could sing something contemporary. Go for something nuts with the Hallel. Whatever tunes you want. But whatever you want to do, you got to do, okay? But make sure that you're singing it joyously because that is what Hallel is. Hallel, you go all the way through the Hallel. Hodu lamunai kitov, ki leolam hasdo. As soon as you finish with that, this is also a great one. If your Haggadah pages are stuck together, just flip through it before the holiday because otherwise you can't rip it open on the holiday. You have to sit there reading it like... with what's it called? So this one clearly had never been opened. So you read it all through. After that, the Hallel, you have Nishmat, Bifi, Ishtabach Shemcha. You finally finish Yahalelucha, Baruch Atah Hashem, Melech Meulal Batishbachot, and here you go, fourth cup. Once you finish the fourth cup, we've done the mitzvah. You make Al Hagefen, because this is your after beracha. Okay, you finish with the after beracha. And when you finish with the after beracha of Borei Pri HaGefen, you'll see it in every Haggadah. Now we're up to Nirtzah. So in Nirtzah, there are a couple of things. All right? Nirtzah has Chad Gadya and it has Echad Miyodeya. So Echad Miyodeya and Echad Gadya. That's it. Then we're done. That's Hallel. We've done Hallel. Now we're up to Nirtzah. Okay? So for Nirtzah, the Sephardim, the Halabis have for before the the Chad Gadya. There's something called Minyalamu Manidri Ammo al Mujali Minyan Wahid Wahid Rabbil Halana Ammo Wahid Minyalamu Manidri. Okay, go for it. It's in the Haggadah. You'll see it in English, transliterated in Arabic. It's basically the Arabic version of Who Knows One. Minyan 13 سنة للمtzvot 12 بتاع إسرائيل 11 كوكب بالسماء 10 كلمات للتورة 9 أشهر لحبلة 8 أيام لميلة 7 أيام للشبت 6 سدادات للمشنة 5 مساحات للتورة 4 متنا و3 متنا و2 موسى وأهارون واحد رب الحلانة أما هو واحد. Okay, that was the whole song. After that you have Chad Gadya. If you can, try and insert the sound effects because at that stage, really, that's all that needs to be done. But now you finished Chad Gadya, with or without your sound effects, you are done. You finished your Seder. You've done everything that you've needed to do. Now that we've gone through the Seder to the best of my ability in the hour and 15 minutes it took, I thought I was going to try and do it in less than an hour and a half, so I'm very, very happy. If there's any other questions, you're more than welcome to ask us on the side. I could see the Farhans really want to have a Seder together. Unfortunately, social distancing I don't think is going to really allow us to do so. Kos of Eliyahu. Okay, so this is a custom not everybody has. The reason of the Kos of Eliyahu is that there's 4 cups on the night of the Seder. Why? Each one of the kosot is keneged one of the expressions of geula. So in the in the Haggadah, in the Torah, it says ve'otzeti v'itzalti v'ga'alti v'lakachti. God says ve'otzeti, I will take you out. V'itzalti, I will save you. V'ga'alti, I will redeem you. Right? V'ga'alti v'lakachti, I will take you to me as a nation. But then there's another expression of veheveti. That last expression is called the expression of the koshel Eliyahu. So some people put a fifth cup on the table and they leave it there. Shefoch hamatcha, when they go to say shefoch hamatcha, they open the front door. That's to welcome in Eliyahu. There's a custom to leave your doors unlocked on this night because it's Leil Shimurim. If there's anyone who's not Jewish listening on this broadcast, I've just kind of caused you guys all sorts of problems. But either way, that's the shefoch hamatcha. That is the story with the koshel Eliyahu. Some people do it. They leave the cup. They make sure it's full. They leave it there from shefoch hamatcha until the end. And then they pour it back in a cup for the next day. You don't have to throw it out. Back in the glass, okay? That is as far as that goes. Okay, what else? Any other questions that we've got over here? Someone's asking good versions of the Haggadah I recommend. I know that the Cherba one is very, very good. That one I saw was excellent. We have Shir HaShirim at the end. Again, not everyone says it. In Chamuvadyaz has Shir HaShirim at the end. Not everybody does it. Some people do it, some people don't. Ashkenazim, by the way, they have a prayer called Chasal Sidur Pesach Kilchata. Now, this is actually quite interesting because really the last thing in the Haggadah actually is nothing, if you think about it, right? Nirtzah means that what we did, we tried to do, and we hope Hashem likes our Seder. But what do you do about it? So in the Ashkenaz Haggadah, they have Chasal Sidur Pesach Kilchata, right, where they're basically asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to accept their Seder. So you could do that in your own language. You know, you could ask Hashem that the Seder that you did, it should go up to the right places in heaven. The Zohar says that our tables are surrounded by all of the malachim, and God comes down to the Seder, and He says to the angels, He says, look at how my children are celebrating all the miracles that I did for them. Look how much love there is. And it brings tremendous berachah to the house. Okay? Another question. Can you please clarify the 16 pores? Yes. So if you look, dam, va'esh, v'timerot ashan, that's 3. Then, dam tzvardei akinim, all of the 10 in the middle. Then at the end, Rabbi Yehuda noten b'hem simanim, ditzach, adash be'achav. So there's 3 simanim at the end. Dam, esh, timerot ashan in the beginning, 3 and 3, and in the middle there's 10. What about Tzom Bechor on Erev Hag? No minyanim this year, so there is a fast, but you're allowed to follow a siyum online on Zoom. Our synagogue is going to be having it. Not sure if my question made it through. What should vegans do with betzah and zeroah on the plate? Even a vegan is allowed to have it on the plate. They just don't have to eat it. Okay, that's really what they should do. All right, but that's but some people actually, if it they have to really figure out what to do if not. Where can you get the SY Haggadah with transliteration? Cherba, I'm going to post it afterwards. Question, very confused about Maror and Charoset. Which one is Romaine and which one is Endive? The first, you could do really, you could do either. It's really okay. All right, you don't need to worry that much about Romaine, about which one, Romaine, Endive. A lot of people use the Endive for just the Maror, and then they use the romaine for the sandwich. And some people do the opposite way around, okay? Do you have to use a lamb shank for zeroah? Many people do, but some people use it for, what's it called? They use just the chicken bone. Someone's asking about counting Omer on the second night. That you'll find in your what's it called? In your Sidurim, in the evening, in your Arbit prayer, before you get to the Seder on the second night, you count the Omer. But you do that before you begin the Seder, because the Seder begins only after nightfall. Do firstborns have to fast? Okay, I answered that one. Can you use honey for the haroset? I never heard of using a honey before. As far as I know, I never heard of that being one of the ingredients. But remember, it's also symbolic, the honey, the haroset, of the bricks, of the mortar that they were using for the bricks. So I don't know if it should be too sweet. They even just with the dates and the pomegranates and the apples, it's already sweet enough. What do you do with kids that don't want to eat all the matzah maror during the seders? You give them the smallest amount that they'll eat. Okay, the smallest amount that they'll eat. Can I clarify about drinking after afikoman? Absolutely. After the afikoman, really the only thing you should be drinking is the cups of wine that you're going to be drinking, cup number 3 and cup number 4, and water if you need. Really, you shouldn't be drinking anything else other than water and what's it called? If you're really bad situation and you need to drink a tea, some people are less strict about it. But really, ideally, you should have that before, which is what I said earlier. I lost you, and why do we eat the egg we eat the egg on both nights, first night and second night. When the ke'ara is removed from the room, the ke'ara is taken out in the beginning of the manishtana, and it's brought back before manishtana, okay, and it's brought back by the avadim hayinu, okay? So when you're answering avadim hayinu, that's when you do it, okay? I want to stick with the seder if it's possible. Daniel, I think that's you. I'll answer your question about koshering pots separately. Okay. Whew! That was intense. I don't think I spoke that much, that quickly, in a very, very, very long time. Okay. Only the first night read not drinking. I'm not sure. I can't see what the question is. Only the first night read not drinking free afikoman. I'm not sure what that means. Okay. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. It's going to be on Facebook Live. It will be put back onto the Facebook itself. You'll be able to find it there, where it will be saved. As well, it will be on the Instagram Live. Look it up there. You're welcome to forward it to anyone you want. Hazaku Baruch. I hope you all have an amazing, amazing holiday. Thank you so much for being here with us. Alamak.